All right, so maybe you've had Achilles issues since back when you were competing as an athlete, or maybe you just had a flare up as you were going out for a run with the guys or a pickup basketball game. Whatever the case may be, you have Achilles pain now and you don't know what to do. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what to do so that you can melt away that pain and get back to doing the activities that you love to do, and not only get a participation trophy for doing them, but also do them at a high level. Because if you're watching this, you're probably a high performer and you want to be able to kick ass in the things that you do and not just participate. So with that being said, I'm going to give you 3 key factors that probably play a role in your Achilles issues and really in most other injuries as well. So by the end of this video, I'm going to give you a framework to not only understand and be able to completely remediate Achilles issues and prevent them from happening in the first place, but I'm also going to give you a framework for understanding other injuries as well. So each factor is going to be really important in this whole equation of understanding and remediating injuries. But factor number 3 is going to be where all the magic happens. And actually, this is where you're going to be able to maximize your body's resilience and longevity. The other 2 factors, again, very important. You can't have one without the other. But factor number 3 is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. So pay attention closely. I'm going to spend the most time on factor number 3. Now, getting into it. The first factor is your activity volume. Basically, you're doing too much too soon for what your body is actually capable of. You can think of it like this. Every single body part, every single structure in your body has this hypothetical capacity where if you surpass that, you're going to run into issues. Something is going to break, whether it's that area or structure or it's a completely another one that seems unrelated but actually is. So you want to make sure that you teeter that line, you really find that balance. So an example of this is, let's say my Achilles capacity is 5 miles and I go out for a 10-mile run. Problems are going to pop up. If my Achilles capacity is, let's say, 30 minutes of basketball, and I go out and play for 2 hours, and I do that week after week, of course, you're going to run into problems. So again, you have to balance that volume, come to a place where you're challenging yourself a decent amount, and of course, allowing yourself to enjoy the activities that you want to be doing. But if you go over that line, then you're going to run into problems. So you got to make sure you have a strategy for this. And this brings us to the second point, which is very similar and closely related. And it's your activity intensity. And so an example of this is, let's say, again, so every structure has an intensity capacity, right? So let's say if I'm running at 80% of my full speed, my knees completely fine. But then when I push it and I go for that 100%, then my knees blow up and they feel terrible, right? Or same thing if you're playing basketball, right? Like you're doing real chill layups and you don't have any kind of back issues, any kind of knee issues, but then when you try and slam it home and go as hard as you can, jump as high as you can, get up for max height, that's when the knees hurt, that's when the low back hurt, when the Achilles hurt. That's an intensity issue. And so again, the 2 work together, volume and intensity. So you have to make sure that you're really playing with both and taking a very clear look at your approach, at your training, and you're competing, your activities, and you have to make sure that stuff is in place. Because if not, then of course, step number 3 is going to help you a considerable amount. It's going to save you a lot of problems and give you more room for error here. But still, you really want to make sure you get these 2 points down, because way too often I see people, they're just sitting for most of their day, and they probably haven't been as active as they were when they were in their early 20s or when they were in college or high school or whatever. And all of a sudden they have this urge to ramp things up, or they get called by their friends to go play in this rec league. And now it's like, all right, well, I gotta suit up and get to playing like I used to and back to balling like I used to. But then you get into it and some issues come up because your body just isn't adapted anymore. Your body, it's funny, it doesn't like to hold on to adaptations. It doesn't like to hold on to you being able to jump high, you having really good endurance, you being able to run really fast. The reason why is because it's costly for your body from a resource standpoint to hold you in a place where you can be really athletic. Your body would rather just be super lazy and just like not athletic and soft. Your body wants to be that. Just like you see anything in nature. Or let's say like you see this city and it's untouched by humans for 100 years. What's gonna happen to it? It's gonna break down. It's gonna get plants growing through it. It's gonna have buildings that collapse eventually. Everything is just going to deteriorate. And it's the same thing with your body. If you're not actively training it and actively pushing, not just maintaining, then you're gonna go backwards. And so it's the same thing here. This is why these points are so important, because you don't wanna do too little where you detrain yourself, and then you also don't wanna do too much where you're, of course, imploding your body. So you really wanna find that sweet spot. So that's activity volume, activity intensity. Those are probably two of the biggest catalysts, until we talk about the third catalyst, which again is one of my favorites, because you can always take the step off the gas, or just kind of like wean things off when it comes to training. Anybody could do that. But when it comes to fixing your mechanics, that's the tough part. That's the tough part. And I already gave it away. So that's number 3. The third factor that plays a role in not only your Achilles issues, but any injury, is your movement mechanics. Specifically, of course, the mechanics through that area, through that structure. But you really got to think about it from a holistic standpoint, from head to toe. What are your mechanics all throughout the chain? Because you might have some inefficiencies in your hips that are causing you to load the foot in a weird, faulty way. And that's what's causing the Achilles pain. Now, it's not gonna be one thing that leads to the other. It's gonna be all these things acting together, again, in a holistic manner. So I can't just say, oh, it's this muscle that's not working, that's why my Achilles hurts. Or, oh, this thing didn't have the right mobility, that's why my Achilles hurts. No, it's everything together. Everything is acting on one thing. So because one thing doesn't have the right mobility, then another thing might not be active, another muscle might not be firing the way it needs to, then something else might be out of position because of that. So everything just really works together. And so in this video, in the rest of this video, I want to be able to show you some of that stuff and hopefully give you a better understanding from a functional standpoint of how your Achilles should be operating and why, again, it might be painful. I'm just looking at some notes here, make sure I don't miss anything. So getting into it, tendon pain, really any connective tissue issues, didn't mean to make that rhyme, but any kind of that stuff comes down to your muscles failing to absorb and transmit force. When your muscles, whether because they're not in the right position or because they just have these restrictions, these adhesions that have built up because they've been chronically shortened, whatever the case may be, your muscles are not firing right. They're not firing to the level that they need to, and they're also not firing reflexively. So that's another thing too that people often miss out on. Can your muscles fire in or on time. That is very important. And some of the things that we're going to go over, some of the specific exercises, are going to show you exactly how to fire on time. So I don't want to talk too much. I just want to make sure that you guys have enough of this backstory. So basically, again, if you can get your muscles firing how they're supposed to, not only just doing their job, but doing their job on time, then you can take that load from the extra load from the areas that are being forced right now to take on extra load, which is probably your Achilles in this situation. So when it comes to the Achilles, the muscle that I see, again, I don't really like taking a one muscle approach, but just bear with me. The muscle that I see often having the biggest deficit is the soleus. So the soleus, let me just back up so you guys can see. The soleus is this muscle on the back of your leg, right here. So not the gastroc, not the meaty part of the lower leg, but the flat part of the lower leg. This runs all the way from your heel, all the way up behind the gastroc, coming into your knee. It's a flat muscle and it lays behind the gastroc. And so this muscle is so important for running, jumping, sprinting, really anything athletic where you're bouncing and really putting a lot of force through your feet. Super crucial. What I find in people with Achilles issues, including myself, I've suffered from Achilles issues for a long time. Even still now, if I don't stay on top of my soleus activation and lower leg function overall, I'll still have these little minor flare-ups. Never anything that is completely derailing me, but still flare-ups nonetheless. And then I got to do the work that I'm about to show you, and then it gets better. So you want to get the soleus active. A lot of times, just doing that with the simple basic exercises I'm going to show you in 2 seconds, that will be perfect. But I want to give you more than that, because if I didn't, I would just be like everybody else out there. So I want to give you extra. I want to give you stuff that's not only going to help you activate the soleus, but then help you take that activation of that soleus and basically integrate it with the rest of your chain. So you need to not only be able to activate that soleus, you need to then be able to load the posterior chain. And then you need to not only be able to do that in the gym in some basic hinges, but then you need to be able to do that as you're sprinting and you're doing your athletic activities. So I'm going to show you exactly what you need to know to be able to do all of that stuff. So the first thing, I really like to get some mind-muscle connection to that soleus. And the first exercise that I like to start off with is, I'm actually not going to do it in here because I don't really have anything, unless I went in the gym, but I won't go all the way in there. Anyways, it's just the seated calf raise machine. So you're sitting down, obviously I don't have anything to show you this, but you're sitting down and then you're basically just raising your heels on that little platform there. I'm sure you guys have seen a seated calf raise machine. If you don't have a seated calf raise machine in your gym or you're doing this at home, what you could do is also sit on a bench so that your legs both are parallel to that bench, to the ground. And basically, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna put a weight on top of your knees, right here on the top of your thighs, and then you're just gonna hold that weight there and just do those calf raises, heel raises. And that alone, again, well, sorry, actually, you're not gonna go up and down. You're just gonna hold this isometric. That's it. Seems so simple, right? But if you have deficits in your soleus, your soleus is gonna cramp like crazy. I remember the first time I did this after not having paid attention to my lower legs in a little while, my soleus were just so sore the next day, like so wildly sore. And every step I took, I would get reminded of the fact that my soleus were so weak. So if you're having a hard time with this, to even hold it for like 30 seconds, then you know you need work. If you get to the end of it, like 45, 60 second range, and you're like, oh my God, that was so hard, and you only had like 25-pound plates on each side of the machine, then you know your soleus need work. So do that one. That's going to help you just engage. So you really want to make sure, again, you have that soleus active by raising the heel as high as possible, really focusing on squeezing that area. And then this is kind of a little bit more advanced, but if you just sit there with good posture, you're going to feel this nonetheless. You want to just think of having a nice tall spine as you're sitting on that bench or whatever it is. And then you want to almost feel like you're pulling your legs back just a tad against the platform that they're on. You're not actually going to move them, but you're slightly pulling them back. You're envisioning that, and that's going to help you engage the hamstrings. And that's going to be key for some of the next things that we're going to do. So not only are we getting the soleus active, but really every exercise I ever program for anybody, I ever recommend anybody do, I always have it with the intention to be a full body exercise. So I don't care, you're obviously the prime mover is the lower leg, but we want to incorporate the whole body. That's how we're going to have the most transfer to any of the activities that we're doing: running, jumping, sprinting, throwing. So that being said, that's the first one. Then the second one, what we're going to do, I'll actually demonstrate this one. So this one is the single leg calf bridge. So what you're going to do is get on your back, get into a glute bridge position. You don't want your feet too far out in front of you because look, my ankles are already fully plantar flexed. I can't even raise my heels really. And then if I'm too close here, then I don't get any loading and engagement of the hamstrings. So you want to find a nice sweet spot. Pretty much this angle is usually the best. You want to just lay your head down on the ground, have a nice tall spine, tall through the head and neck especially. And then what you're going to do is you're going to raise both of your heels as high as they go. You're going to bring your butt just a little bit off the ground, and then you're going to get this other leg up. And then you keep that other heel as high as possible while you keep that butt as low as possible. And you keep that head and neck nice and tall, that spine nice and tall, big chest, core engaged, and that soleus is going to be working like crazy. So do that one for probably start out for about 30 seconds. And if the single leg version is completely impossible, then just do the double leg. You don't have to be a hero here, just do double leg. I typically start people off with single, and it's because it's just a little bit more specific, right? Because you're on one leg, so it's a little bit more specific to the activities that you want to do, like running. So keep that in mind, but it's totally fine because really these exercises, these initial ones, are more so for you, again, just creating that connection with your body. So keep that in mind. But that's the second exercise, is that single leg calf bridge. You want to do a couple sets of those, just like the seated calf raise, 2 to 3 sets of maybe 30 to 60 seconds as you get better. And just do that, and you'll start to feel the connection. You'll start to feel your foot working real well. All right, so next, if you didn't cramp up from either of those 2 exercises, which I would be very surprised if you didn't, if you have Achilles issues. But anyways, if you didn't, this one will surely make you cramp up and feel just some wild activation that you may have never felt in your life before. So if you've been with me for a while, you may have seen me do this exercise. I have this also in my free 7-day program. If you want to grab that, just DM me Duvi, D-U-V-I, on Instagram. My handle is @AirDuvi. But anyways, you're going to get into a similar glute bridge position, and you have 2 options here. I like to play around with both of these. So basically you can either be in the same exact position that we were in for the single leg calf bridge, where your butt is as low to the ground as possible, your heels are as high as possible, which you want to make sure, again, your feet aren't too close to you. You want to have like a little bit of distance. That way you're going to work the hamstrings like crazy. So really your feet, the bottom of your feet should be parallel to the ground. And that's going to give you a nice position to get the soleus engaged, to get the hamstrings engaged, and depending on what you do with your hips, also get the glutes really well engaged. So again, you can do these little rolls with the butt super low, but you can also do them with the butt high, getting the butt as extended as possible, getting the core nice and tight. I'm getting my head nice and long, and then you're getting these rolls in. And that's so difficult. I'm so close to cramping just after 10 seconds of doing that. I need to work on those for sure. So that one, again, you have the option of doing either one. I find that the second option, typically a little bit harder, but it's real good for just incorporating that whole posterior chain to a much greater degree. And then you can also do single leg. I don't even need to show you, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just have that other leg up in the air. Always want to make sure whenever your foot is in the air, you want to make sure that you're dorsiflexing that ankle. That's going to create tension through the foot, which is going to translate up into the chain as more activation, more connection all throughout your structure. So that's that. Now what I want to take you through is some exercises that are going to, again, integrate the rest of your body. Because now we've built that mind-muscle connection, so we're going to want to learn how to load these areas as we lengthen them. So that's going to be crucial. What I mean by that is, for instance, if you're doing a hamstring stretch or you're just bending down and touching your toes, you can either go down and touch your toes in a way where you're actively pulling yourself down and you don't even really feel your hamstring stretching like that, or you can do it in a way where you passively go down and you're not really pulling yourself down, you're just letting gravity take you down, and you feel like your hamstrings are about to rip. You feel like there's a lot of tension through them, not in a nice way. And that second way is how a lot of people stretch, how a lot of people move, and that's what holds them back, and that's what keeps their bodies unstable, whatever the word is. So that's why we want to make sure everything is active. We never want to just let gravity do its thing. When gravity just does its thing, that's when people become hunchbacks. That's when people have all this compression through their spine, disc issues, whatever. Like really any issue comes down to the fact that you're not engaging your body fully in a structurally integral way as you're doing the activities that you're doing. So that's just super key, guys. So in this exercise, essentially you're going to be loading your soleus, and then you're going to be, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out this camera set up here, but yeah, you're going to be loading your soleus, and then you're going to be lengthening it. You need to learn how to do the two. And in a similar way, what you want to do with your abs, a lot of people can activate their abs, their six-pack, by hunching over like this, flexing at their spine, but can you keep the six-pack activated as you lengthen and bring the sternum up? That way, you're actually lengthening and holding this integral structure here without rib cage poking out and just bending at the back and not really holding stability. I'm super loose here. I'm like one of those car guys, the blow up guys outside of the car dealerships. Anyways, so yeah, you want to be able to hold that tension, whatever it is. There's so many different cases around the body that I could show you this, but I'll just get into what I originally planned to show you, which is this foot pronation drill. And so basically, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take that activation that you got from the three exercises prior, And now that I know how to actually engage my soleus, I'm going to load it as I engage it. I'm loading it as I engage it. I used to teach this exercise just in the air like this. I actually got this from my guy David Gray, but now I like to hold on to something, a little addition I've added, just so that you don't really have to think about balance at all. I find that sometimes people are slightly off balance. I also find sometimes that you're not really able to load the soleus just quite as well as you could if you were holding on to something in front of you or to the side of you. So I really like this version right here. And basically, in addition to learning how to load and lengthen the soleus, you're also learning how to pronate at the foot. So basically, pronation at the foot is like a plunger. Like, imagine I have a plunger on the floor, it's connected to the floor right now, and I push it down. That's exactly what your foot should be doing as I move my shin forward. That is pronation. Pronation happens in any kind of cutting, running, any kind of action where you have a foot contact and you're toeing off. You have to pronate through that foot in order for that to happen. So that's why a lot of athletes, a lot of like basketball players, football players, soccer players even, they have quote unquote flat feet. That just means that their feet are stuck in pronation. And that's actually really good for athletics, but when it comes to being functional and saving yourself from injuries, that's where you can run into issues. So you want to be able to do both. You want to be able to know how to pronate through the foot properly, I will say, because a lot of the pronation that happens is compensatory, and some of it comes from the ankle and some of it comes from different parts of the foot, and that's why you'll see issues like plantar fasciitis, Achilles issues, etc. Because you're just not really loading the foot how it should be. So you want to be able to do that. You want to be able to pronate and supinate properly. And then you also want to be able to load this soleus right here in the right way. So all you're going to do, again, you're going to make sure the heel is nice and connected to the ground. The heel never comes up. Once the heel comes up, you stop with the knee. Or once you feel like it wants to lose pressure with the ground, stop. Because then you're going to be missing the point of the exercise. You're not really going to be engaging the way that we want to. Also, never scrunch the toes. Once your toes scrunch and really like grab the ground and crunch up, that's when you know your foot is locked up. If your foot is locked up, you're missing the point, because again, this is a mobility drill. You want to see your foot go from this to this, this to this, shin forward, shin back, shin forward, shin back. That's the action that you want to feel for. You really want to just like sit there. And my clients, a lot of the times, they have trouble with this one first. There's a learning curve. I have a whole video on this. I'll put it in the description below so that you can just watch the whole in-depth video. But basically, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing, is essentially a foot mobility drill and a soleus load and lengthening drill. So that's the foot pronation. Now, the second thing, or the second variation of this, is one where you can now load the posterior chain and load and lengthen the soleus at the same time. So you're going to be in pretty much the same position, except now you're going to bend over. Make sure you have a nice long spine here. You don't want to low back, or you don't want to round at the low back. And now you're just going to do the same thing, but it's slightly more relevant for sprinting and running and all that, because your hamstrings, your glutes are loaded. So you're just going to do the same thing. I'm coming back, I'm coming forward, I'm coming back, I'm coming forward. And again, you don't want to feel like your hamstrings are just ripping apart or your glutes are just ripping apart. You want to make sure that you're engaging your leg 360 degrees around so that you can feel everything actively firing and nothing is excessively stretching. When you feel something excessively stretching, that means that you're missing activation somewhere, and that leads to instability. So that's key right there. So again, I'm not going to go into those exercises too much. I go through those in depth with my clients, and I'm able to actually give them feedback on their training, on their exercises when they send me videos, so that I can perfect their form and they start really making these connections. So that's the learning process, is really being able to take video of yourself and analyze it, whether you know how to analyze it yourself because you understand biomechanics, or you hire a coach like me to do so for you. Whatever the case may be, that's a really important part of this process in improving your movement mechanics. So we're not done yet, guys. Please stick with me because we haven't even done the best stuff yet. The very last piece is going to bring everything together. And we're gonna essentially work this new muscle activation into fundamental patterns. And that's gonna be the key. So can you hold this activation, hold these positions as you're doing things like a squat, a lunge, a hinge? Specifically, we're gonna go over the hinge here because that's probably the most relevant pattern for everything that we were working on, because you wanna be able to engage the soleus, the calf, the hamstring, the glute. You want to engage all of that together as you're running, which is really the foundation for any sport, right? So you want to be able, oh, my camera was going crazy. Camera stand. So you want to be able to now have this position. You see, like any position where you're about to start accelerating forward, this shin comes forward. Now, what you're gonna see from this exercise is that it's mimicking proper acceleration mechanics. And this doesn't matter. You don't have to be a sprint, 100-meter sprinter or a series track athlete. You're doing the same acceleration mechanics, like whether you're like in basketball, your first step in basketball, like first step in soccer, whatever, like you're coming off the line in football. I never played football, if you couldn't tell. But whatever it is, it's still all acceleration mechanics. So we're gonna be able to work this. And oftentimes that's a huge issue, is the mechanics in your acceleration that are causing Achilles issues, or that have at least caused your Achilles to flare up a little bit. And so I want to fix that here, because what a lot of people will do is they won't have that stability through their foot and their soleus. So the heel comes down instead of you actually rolling through your foot, the ball of your foot, and the ankle stays strong. Look up class 2 lever on Google. It's like a wheelbarrow. The wheel is the hinge point, and then you have the handles, right? And what my arms are doing, this is what my calf and my soleus are responsible for, specifically the gastroc mostly. It's this motion of lifting up the wheelbarrow that my gastroc, my calf, is responsible for. And then the ball of the foot is the wheel, and then the load that goes inside the wheelbarrow is essentially your whole body. So you want to make sure your feet are operating like a class 2 lever. You'll see in every scenario of the Achilles snapping, the heel goes down to the ground like that. It makes this jerk here. Instead of pushing off with a nice rigid foot and ankle, it comes down like this. No matter the sport. Look at every case of that, that's what happens. So, long story short, I know I'm talking a lot here, but this is all good stuff, all important stuff. I'm gonna show you this last one, and this is gonna put everything together. So basically what we're gonna do, guys, we're going to, where should I set this up? Grab a wall. We need to back that up. So we're gonna grab a wall. And again, similar to this last exercise, we're gonna be angling our shin forward. We're gonna be grabbing onto this wall right here. I usually like to grab onto a squat rack so that I have 2 pulls or whatever you want to call them to grab onto for support, but this is all I have right now. And you're going to take those same principles of the foot pronation drill. Now, it's really, 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 really key that you really understand how to do the foot pronation properly. So this is definitely more advanced, because if you're not doing the foot pronation drill properly and you're really stuck and rigid in your foot, you're not really going to feel the activation that you need to from this. But nonetheless, what you're going to do is angle this shin forward, and then you're just going to hinge. And what you're going to do is you're going to keep this shin forward the whole time. And you also want to make sure you're going to slightly internally rotate. So flip this heel out of the free leg. That way it's going to take you from being externally rotated, where your glutes aren't really loaded, to a little bit more internally rotated, where your glutes can actually load better. So you're going to hold that position the whole time, and you're just hinging. You're just hinging. And then eventually, when you get that and you feel the crazy activation in your hamstrings and glutes, then you're going to come and you're going to push up like this. And notice how, again, because my shin is stuck in that forward position, it's forcing me to come through my hips. And it's forcing me to triple extend properly. People talk about triple extension all the time, but they don't talk about the sequence that you're triple extending in. What a lot of people will do, I'm going to show you guys this quick, is their shin, instead of continuing to move forward and then the hips move over that, what people will do is move the shin back, and then they'll pop straight up. So instead of going like this, they're going like this. I just lost all my tension. I'm not loaded anymore when I just let my shin come back like that. So that's what we're working in this exercise. So that's pretty much it, guys. I don't want to talk too much more, because yeah, this is going to be a really long video, but nonetheless, I think there was really good stuff in here. This stuff can really change the game for you. This is exactly what I implement with my clients who have Achilles issues. My guy Drake, for instance, he literally had Achilles issues so bad that he couldn't walk. He's been a runner all his life. He did a lot of long distance running, cross country, all that. And he got to a place where his Achilles issues were so bad, not only could he not run, but some days he literally had to limp around because his Achilles felt so ginger and brittle. And we did this stuff with him, and voila, all his Achilles issues go away. And now he actually ran the fastest marathon time he's ever ran. Like, no lie. And so that stuff is possible, guys. Like, you can really reset your whole body. Like, it doesn't matter if you've been having Achilles issues or you've been having any other issues for that matter, how long you've been having them, what doctors have been telling you about them, what your physio, what anybody has told you about them. You can fix it. Your body is resilient. You have the power to transform your body. I promise. And so that being said, guys, if you want me to come in and audit these 3 areas that we just went over, your activity volume, your activity intensity, and then your overall movement mechanics, so that we can see what's going on, put together a strategy for you, have you start implementing everything, doing the work, getting the foundational movement patterns down, making sure you're integrating the whole chain, and basically just ironing out any kind of imbalances that you've probably had since you started being an athlete. If you want me to come in and do that for you so that we can revolutionize your training and transform your body into the athletic beast that you know you're capable of being, just book a call down below. We'll get on a call, we'll chat it up, see what exactly your situation is, and we'll see if it makes sense to work together. So if that sounds good, just book a call down below, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Peace.